For me, the spirit of the African Methodist Episcopal Church can be captured in 2 or 3 words. The first is liberation. The second is development. And the third is definition. That we are about the liberation of the oppressed people of the African diaspora. 2, that we are for their development. Call it self-help if you wanna, but their development and participation in the world society on equal footing with everybody else. And third, that we will define ourselves, we will define our issues, we will define our own goals, because whoever makes the definition has already forecast the outcome. I remember with amusement and appreciation the 1972 General Conference, because that was when I ran to be a bishop. And I was campaigning for the bishopric. And they brought Richard Nixon's brother to the General Conference to speak in place of the president. And one of our bishops sponsored that, and another one of our bishops led a protest against it. Many of us joined the protest against it because we didn't want either Richard Nixon or his brother to speak, because they interrupted the worship service at the opening of the General Conference. When that interruption occurred, Bishop Jordan got up, protested, and walked out. Many of us joined him. When we got outside and the press was pressing, why did we treat the president's brother that way? One of the preachers said, John Adams is our spokesman. And I knew that my campaign for bishop had been blown, but it helped me instead of hurting me. And I explained that Mr. Nixon's attitudes on race and his general demeanor were not very popular with us, and therefore we did not want his brother. But the main offense was that they interrupted the worship service, which we all felt was very inappropriate. Many of us have always contended that we needed to put into our people's hand a position statement on the major and especially the controversial issues of our time. The position papers, which we eventually called the Black Papers, as opposed to the concept of intellectual property being called white papers, we called these Black Papers, were put together. Bishop Frank Madison Reed Jr. and I were chair and co-chair of that first edition, and we took positions on all the controversial issues, beginning primarily with race and segregation, economic development, abortion, homosexuality, all the issues that are still fairly current. The position papers were in the 1976 edition of the position papers of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. I read them occasionally, and I don't think my positions have changed much since then. They were designed for the people to have some guidance from the denomination. So the process was we gathered a collection of well-informed and scholarly people from all across the church and put these various papers together, submitted them to the General Conference, and the General Conference either approved or rejected them. In this instance, they were approved, and they were distributed to the church. I think the priority issues remain the same. I would say that the first and most important issue that needs to be addressed always is the issue of health care. And I can't understand the attitude of America that health care is not as important as military action or education, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything else. So I think that's the first priority of national security, is to have a healthy population. I still think that education and competence are an important issue. I think the development of the third, fourth, and fifth worlds is a very high mission priority for the church. So if I were reshaping the AME Church with all the resources necessary to do it, I would be into healthcare and medical services and hospitals. I would be into educational institutions of all kinds, from preschool through Ph.D. programs. And I would be into development around the world so that the underserved and underprivileged peoples of the world would have a chance at their dreams. We operate in a capitalist culture, and in the capitalist culture, the primary value is wealth and money. Therefore, if you're going to function in the United States of America, you have to have money to function. You can get just as much justice as you can pay for. If you can hire Johnny Cochran to be your lawyer, you can go free. If you can't hire him and you get the court to appoint you a lawyer, you go to jail. So the whole thing, you can get as much house as you can pay for. You can get as much health care as you can pay for. Our culture is totally dominated by this capitalist focus on money and wealth. So we have to function in that culture. And so we have to be extremely careful both about money. One, not to make it our primary objective, but also to have enough to function intelligently and efficiently. So I've always talked about money in terms of controlling debt and making good investments. And one final issue and problem which I see in the life of the church is the church abandoning its theology, which serves people, and surrendering it to the ideology of capitalism, which is the reach for money. That's all I want to say.